Today we're going to have a look at a spiral design, and it's something quite different to what I've created before. And I run a flower arranging class in the evenings, and we did this design last week with some roses. And I often get asked, you know, if I'm buying some roses from the supermarket when I'm doing my grocery shop, what can I do with them that's a bit different? And this design is ideal for those bunches of single flowers that you often pick up last minute. Of course, you could order beautiful flowers from your florist shop as well, but this is a great design with single flowers. For me, it works better if it's the same colour of flower and the same choice. So my example today is going to be this lovely rose. It's an apricot-y cream shade, and it's a new one to me. It's called Hot Flare, and it's opened beautifully. It's the first time I've used it, so I wasn't quite sure how it was going to work, but it does look really nice. So you'll see with the video, I'm going to create a spiraled effect with the flowers, and they're going to circle their way down from the top to the bottom, almost like if you imagine a spiral staircase with a centre axle in the middle. My flower arrangement is going to replicate those individual steps on the stairs that will rotate round a single point. And I'm going to use these gorgeous bulrushes. Fantastic, quite pale colour combination today. I've got beiges, browns, a little bit of gold, and they all link in really nicely with this container that I've got here on the bottom. So we've got bulrushes. This might be a new material for you. This is a grass. It's very much like millet, and it's previously been sprayed gold. So this was done by the suppliers, and again, it's a really good colour link with my base. And I've got some Rhapis palms. Now they look like this when they come in. It's a gorgeous palmate leaf. I've used it a couple of times in modern designs. It's very flexible. You can cut it, staple it, plait it and weave. And it's a really robust leaf that lasts a really long length of time. So that's Rhapis. And what you'll see is I've created different shapes with the leaves, so they help to accentuate and exaggerate that spiral shape. And I've also got, this is a Draceana sanderiana. It's a variegated green and white, and that's going to help give me a really good link between my foliages and my flower choice. And that's it. So some basic materials. Now, if you can't get hold of the foliage like I've got, don't worry too much. You can create the overall spiraled effect by just using an individual flower type. So don't panic too much if you can't get hold of the foliage like myself. Now, my container is just an ordinary flower pot that you would put a nice houseplant into. It's quite a heavy base, neutral sort of colour, and I've used probably about half a block of floral foam in there, which has been previously soaked, and I've placed some smaller pieces of foam in the side there to hold that into place so it doesn't move around. And you'll notice that the floral foam is in line with my container. So again, when I encourage you to do designs that are a little bit more modern, then we keep our floral foam lower than our container, so we don't end up with lots of foliage needed to cover and hide the floral foam. So that's all our flowers and our mechanics sorted. Let's get started. Right, okay, now my tallest rose is this one here. So this is going to give me the height of my flower arrangement. And it doesn't really matter how tall you go if you're practicing or this is your first type of arrangement, but ideally we need to go about twice the height of the container. And that avoids the container becoming the more dominant feature within the design. So if we think about my hand there measuring the side of the container, we're going to go once, twice, and it's fine to go taller, but I would encourage you not to go short. You end up with quite a dumpy arrangement. It's very short and squat. It's far more elegant when we make it tall and linear in its styling. So if you think about the centre of your floral foam, I'm going to start almost in the centre of my foam, and I'm going to face my flower outwards so that we can appreciate it and we can see the flower head. And I'm going to insert it in about 2 inches there on the bottom to make sure it's nice and secure within my foam. And then that's my taller row, so I don't have any flowers that are going to go taller than this point here. But what I am going to do is I'm going to use the bulrushes, and this is a great example of linear material. I'm going to use the bulrushes to create what I'm referring to as a centre column or a centre axle, and that's going to be tight into the middle, and that's what we're going to arrange all those flowers around. And again, don't worry too much if you don't have any material to put here in the centre. This just helps, I think, to give you a guide. So if this is your first time and you're a little bit concerned about whether you will be able to rotate around nicely in a spiral, then just place something like a garden cane there in the centre. I'm just going to come slightly over to one side. Just think about maybe placing a garden cane there in the centre, and then at least you have a reference point to rotate around. Now typically, whenever I start to do a video, we always get a bumblebee comes to join me, and I can hear him now buzzing around. So hopefully it's not going to annoy you too much when you're watching. Okay, so that is my centre core, and you can see that my spiral of flowers is going to come around the outside of this centre core here in the middle. And don't confuse this with the spiral design that we create with a hand tie. They're two very different designs. So this is a spiral arrangement in floral foam and completely different to the spiral stem that we create with a hand tie. Okay, so what we're looking to do now is to step our next flower down. So the head is sitting underneath my first flower. And I've prepared my roses just a little bit beforehand to save some time when we're filming. But if you want an easy if you want an easy trick to work out where your flower needs to go next, turn your flower head upside down and sit it on top of the foam, and then you can roughly work out where you need to cut your stem, allowing yourself an inch or so to go into the floral foam. So you can imagine that section there is going to go into my foam, so my head is going to sit nicely underneath my first flower. And it doesn't matter if you rotate to your left or to your right. Just go in whichever direction you feel is the most comfortable and the most natural way to work. I think possibly if you're left-handed, you're more inclined to work to your left and rotate around to your left. At the moment, I'm going towards the right because I'm right-handed, and you'll see that if we think of them as being steps, we're stepping down and turning as we come around. Now, if you've ever visited a castle or a monastery, you know, some ancient ruins maybe, and you've walked up the inside of a tower. I mean, if you've been in the Leaning Tower of Pisa, you'll know exactly what I mean. So these are like those steps that you would find inside those very narrow passageways, or those towers that you visit maybe when you're on holiday. Okay, so if we get our next flower, we turn that upside down, and that will give us a good gauge and an estimate for how tall we need that flower to go. And I've spiraled my turntable round a little bit so that I'm working in the next progression as I go around. So you'll see that lovely stepped effect starting to take shape. Now at the moment, my heads are all facing vertically. The flower head is facing upwards, and I'm not yet angling any flowers forward. And you know, this is only one way of doing a spiral. You could exaggerate that spiral and have it more pronounced and more angular coming out from the sides. It's a design that's very popular in Thailand and the Philippines and that sort of area of the world. And I'm going to carry on bringing my flowers down so you can see how that lovely spiral is starting to take shape quite quickly. And I'm aiming to have the gap between the flowers about the same size as the rose head, so we get a good even distribution of my flower heads as we work our way down. Now of course, if there are any damaged petals or anything that needs removing off the outside of your rose, then consider doing that. And I have left a little bit of the greenery on there so that we have a variety of colour and texture. And I think if I had a bigger selection of roses, today I'm limited with the choice of flowers that I've got, but I think if I had extra flowers, I would grade the flower heads. So I was starting with my smaller head and I was getting bigger and bigger and bigger as I went to the bottom, because that would visually work a lot better than the way I'm doing it today, where I'm almost sort of staggering the flowers and I don't have that pleasing gradation of flower size heads as I move to the bottom. Now if we look here, and you'll see how that wonderful spiral works all the way around, and again you can spend a little bit more time than I am making sure that they're equally spaced out. But when I get back to the front here, so I'm back to where my very first flower was positioned, I'm now starting to angle outwards. So rather than my flower stems being in that very parallel placement, I'm now starting to angle them out so they become more radiated and they're angled out from that centre point. And that just means that we get a more pronounced spiral as we come towards the bottom. You don't have to do it this way, you can continue quite tight and quite close to the centre, but I thought this would be nice just to angle them out a little bit more. And take your time, bring your flowers out. Oop, now I've got a little bit of, there we are, it's better. It was hitting the stem then as I got close to the bottom. So you can see now how that tight spiral there at the top starts to splay out further as we come down towards the container at the bottom, and it will bring a more elegant curve out towards the base section. Okay, now you can keep them quite tight to the foam, but I've got enough length in my flowers to bring them a little bit wider here at the bottom. And as we come to the bottom section, my flower heads, rather than sitting on top of one another like steps like they do in this section, it's more of a pathway as we come round to the bottom. So again, if you think about travelling and you may be walking up a turret in a castle, this is the path that leads you to the stairs, and then the stairs are stepped as we get to the top. So hopefully that makes sense. Probably thinking, what is she talking about? Taking you on turrets and up a step. But hopefully that gives you an idea of what I'm trying to achieve. Now I've aimed to have the two of the smaller flowers at the end, because visually it's more pleasing to finish with a smaller rose. And if you're lucky, then you can finish where you started. I don't quite have enough flowers to bring them all the way around, but you can see how that spiraled effect really takes shape and how well it works with that one single flower, bringing that strong colour down towards the bottom. Now I'm just going to check it straight. This one is slightly moving forward, so I'm going to tuck him in. There we are. So that's the basic shape that we've tried to create. And I've also got some of the grass which has a more golden colour to it. So I'm going to add this into the top section and bring a little bit of the gold colour in down in the top part of the spiral. Now I don't have enough of this to bring this all the way around, but I really like the colouring that it gives me. So this is going to almost add some colouring into the centre core. And I've chosen the smaller piece first, and I've got thicker as I've come down towards the front, and I'm finishing off with my bigger piece of grass down towards the base. And it's a wider, more bunchy material, so it fills out a bigger gap. But now we have two sets of spirals starting to come down towards the front. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pick up where I've started this gold section. I'm going to add in the variegated foliage, so we've got a link between the dark green foliage and the rose itself. Just stretch over to get it, it's a little bit out of my reach. And I'm going to go again, look for the smaller piece. They're all actually fairly similar in their size. That looks as if it's the smallest. So what I'm going to do here is bring them down, following that spiral. I'm going to remove one leaf because it's sticking out too far and it's going to spoil the shape. And then I'm going to keep working my way down towards that base rose to bring this lovely colour through to the bottom. So we're really repeating the spiral shape. So we have a spiral effect with the roses, and now I'm repeating the shape and the visual line that I've created. So we often in flower arranging and floristry talk about line. It is one of the elements of design, and we get line created with this shape of material here in the middle. I'm just going to pop that one in more into the middle. So this is a line material, gives the impression of a straight line, but then I've created a visual line. It's like a pathway of flowers that rotates from the top down to the bottom. And then what I'm doing here at the base with the shorter pieces of the Draceana is just bringing that colour through to the base. And any of those smaller bits that I had left over, I can now use those in at the base. That one's a bit soft, so hopefully we'll get that one in. Yep, bit of patience, and that sits quite comfortably in there. Now what I'll do in just a second is I'll just bring it a bit closer to the camera. Hopefully you can see there's very little foam left to cover at the bottom. But if you can imagine that we'd left that foam above the container, we now would have all that foam that we would need to cover, and it would become very cluttered quite quickly, and we would lose that elegant streamlined effect that we're trying to create. There, so how is that coming along so far? I think that's looking lovely. So what we will do now is we'll complete the bottom part of the design, adding in my larger leaf. And this one is the Rhapis palm that I've already started to cut down. And I'll start with the fairly wide pieces at the base. And we're going to almost sit them underneath the roses, almost like a collar underneath the flowers. I'm just going to trim this one up to make it a bit more even. So these are sitting just almost like a little collar there underneath the roses. And I might trim them, I might make them a bit neater when we get to the end, but we'll see how it's going to progress first of all. So I've ended up with a design that's almost front facing because it didn't have enough roses to come all the way back to where I started. But when I get to this position here and the spiral starts to elevate and move upwards, I now need to angle my palms to follow the line of the flower line right to the very top. So I'm going to follow the shape that we've created with that wonderful spiral effect. So we're just going to pop one more flat leaf at the base so that we have a continuous line of material all the way around. And in this position here, we're going to start to bring the foliage up towards the top. And this is where I'm now going to start to use shorter pieces and more angled pieces of the foliage. And the beauty of using this palm is it doesn't mind being cut on the ends. It doesn't go black, it doesn't damage in any way. So it's fine for me to continue cutting it to make it the same shape as that spiral. So you can see I followed that all the way around. I've just got one more piece to put in. And what I will do is I'll put this in whole, and then you will see how out of shape and how ugly that looks. It's lost the line, it's making your eyes splay out all over the place. If I just turn it around, for you to see it from different angles. You can see it's just completely spoilt that neat effect that we were trying to create. So what I will do now is I will cut it to follow the shape of my spiral, and anything that sticks out in the wrong position, you can just cut it off. And I'm almost going to remove, if I just turn this round for you to see, this section here is pretty much not needed. So I'm going to remove that completely because it's spoiling that shape that I'm trying to create. Okay, so if I come back round, I need to take a few more, maybe an inch off a few of those leaves, so that I have that continued line, that lovely neat spiraled effect. And this leaf is fantastic for this design because it really does accentuate that round shape that we're trying to create. If you'd have used a square leaf here at the bottom, something that was maybe more angular or pointed, something like a leather leaf, then you would have had points and you wouldn't get that nice curve as it progresses towards the top. So I'm just going to trim off a few of these leaves here. And you know, you might be thinking at this stage that's an awful lot of foliage that she's chopping off, and you know, it's a waste. If you want to, you can dry these. They're quite easy to use in tapestry designs or for groundwork, for basin, funeral tributes or floral designs. So just, you know, rather than discard of everything, think about how you could use these in a different design. I'm likely to dry these and use them as confetti because we've got a wedding soon, which is having all natural dried petals. So that would work really well. And other than this section here, it's just going to have a bit of a trim. I think we're pretty much done on this design. And we're going to take it around one more time to see how we're doing. This one I think needs to go a bit, just a little bit lower, and then I think I'm done. So what do we think? I'm going to slightly move it because I know there's an arrangement behind me and it might be, there we are, that's a bit better for you. So our top flower, and you can see how it steps down, just like steps would be in a very tight space, or a spiral staircase maybe. And then as we get to the bottom, they angle out more and finish quite neatly there at that side. And then again, if you follow the foliage, it will take you all the way up in a wonderful line right to the top. Almost like a helter-skelter. So for those of you who haven't visited a turret or a castle, it reminds me very much of the inside of the Leaning Tower of Pisa. But if you haven't been able to visit those wonderful places, then think of a helter-skelter at the fair, and you'll know exactly what I mean. You're going to sit here and you're going to spin all the way around to the bottom, and then you're going to climb those stairs and make it all the way back to the top. So what do we think? A little bit of fun this afternoon for you with a different type of flower arrangement. Have a practice. It's a great one to do, as I said, with just a single bunch of flowers that you can collect from anywhere. And if you're training to be a florist, think about how well this would work at maybe Valentine's Day, how different it would be from just your standard bunch of roses with gypsophilia and foliage, and see what you can do with it. So don't forget, if you've been enjoying the tutorial videos, so please subscribe to the channel or hit the bell to be notified every time I upload a new video. We're really close to hitting 1,000 subscribers, which means I'll be able to do some live tutorials as well. So please subscribe, enjoy, and sit back and relax and have a little go yourself, and we'll see you very soon. Bye for now.